think about, you even saw it in the definition, you think about the urgency of things and the importance of things, it's where things get kind of a little murky, right? We get confused with this because we're trying to figure this out. And so I want to really unpack this because I think this could be a real big game changer for you as you're even starting to think through prioritization tomorrow. Okay?
Does context come into it? I think, or like the subject. That's something too. It's like urgent to who?
That's a great question. That is a really good question. And we will talk about that a little bit. Okay. So you have the two categories. You have urgent, you have non-urgent, you have important, you have not important or non-important. This could be tricky. It's just this idea of, hold on a second. Did I shift this around? Do I want this up top? Not urgent, urgent. Or do I want this up here? There we go. I was like, what? Okay, this is what I want.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, makes sense.
Hold on a second. I'm like trying to see it. Not urgent. Nope. Wait. Urgent. I'm like, I have to pause for a second because I'm like, I want to make sure I'm doing this right.
We can play it out too.
We totally can. I have it written down, but I'm like, why is it?
Your organization, by the way, like the fact that you haven't accidentally mixed up a card in a pile. I wish everybody could see the table. I might be able to. No, they can't.
Okay. I was like, no, this is not right. Why is this not feeling right? There we go. Urgent.
I gotcha.
I was like, this is not right. Here we go. We're keeping this in too.
Ike is not a cyborg.
Okay, here we go. All right. So I was like, something's not right at the top. So you have this important aspect, something that's important, something that's not important, and then you have the urgency of things and something that's not urgent. The challenge is, what is urgent and what is important? I think the important side, people have maybe a little bit more clarity on. Not everybody, but people have. But the urgency side, I think, especially in our culture in the West, everything sometimes feels urgent. I mean, advertising, marketing is always urgent. Buy it now, get it now. And so we struggle with this a little bit, and we can put everything in urgency, which is why there's so much anxiety when it comes to prioritization and the things that we go after. And so I want to help maybe ease some of that and just give you some perspective. So we'll start here. Let's first talk about what you should do if you're in this category. Now, I'm not going to be extreme. Some people use extreme language when they come here. I'm like, that's not realistic. So I want to put some realistic language, but I think that is really helpful. When it comes to things that are not important and not urgent, we need to avoid it. Sorry, I'm doing this wrong. We need to limit it.
Okay.
When it comes to not urgent, but not important, we need to avoid. When it comes to important, not urgent, we need to schedule it. And when it comes to important, urgent, we need to do it.
Get it done.
Okay. Like I said, the challenge is what is in this category, because this is everything. If everything's here, then nothing's here, right? If everything's urgent important, then nothing is. So we have to really be selective of what we do now, because how many things can you actually do right now? How many things can you actually fit in a day? When people are thinking urgent and important, they're thinking about their day typically. So how many things can you actually fit? And this is where the challenge comes. If you have 15 things you need to do in your day, then it's not really that urgent. And so when something urgent comes up, how do you navigate that? Does that make sense?
It
So, any thoughts on this at the start?
So with urgency, is it also planned, or is it somewhat insinuating like it's not planned?
You know what's interesting with urgency is sometimes the urgency we feel is not by us, it's by other people.
Context.
Yes.
That's what I was, and I think like when I think about doing it too, like sometimes and you mentioned like the Western culture, 99% of what is perceived as urgent could be scheduled. And I think as any human, like we get flustered and will throw out the important non-urgent stuff that we had planned, right? And that's where you snowball, right? So like it wasn't urgent, so I scheduled it. Today's the day, it's scheduled. Now you need something urgently because you didn't schedule your tasks, right? And that's so pervasive in the corporate world, right? Like, especially, I think EVPs, SVPs, like they know the impact of when they pass a directive. I mean, everything stops and everybody focuses, forget about what was scheduled. But this is big. I mean, this is something too. And I don't want to overlook too the limit it. Because I get why you were talking about the extreme context earlier too. Because I'm like, what do you mean limit it? I'm not doing it.
Is that realistic though?
No. No. And I think and just for me too, like, unfortunately, the world literally doesn't revolve around me. So if I don't think it's important and I don't think it's urgent, I am not that self-centered of a person where I'll just not do any of it. I think there's a lot to be said too about limiting it in the sense of knowing it'll have a positive impact, or maybe it'll give people an opportunity to see that you care about them, right? Going full circle today. I get it. I get it a lot.
So even in this category, I want you to get this perspective. Like, let's say it's from somebody else. Like sometimes we do it ourselves, sometimes it's other people. But let's even use a boss example because that's a lot of people's mentality. If a boss wants to, you've given directions before, probably in your mind, you want them to do it pretty quickly, right? But what's challenging for people is they never push back. And pushing back can be healthy because when you push back, you're fighting for your time because you know what is most important for you, hopefully, right? So let's say you're prioritizing your day and someone in your world comes and says, hey, we need to get this done. You should be able to say, I know this is important to you. Is it okay if you give me 3 extra days to get this done? And if they're like, no, I need it now. Okay, if it's that important, I can shift some things around, but you're going to have to at least give me it tomorrow. We don't push back. We're just like, got it, boom. And then we just add it to our list of things to do of all the things we're not going to get done. Instead of saying, okay, let me push back a little bit when other people ask to say, you know what, I need to get this done. You have this, you need me to get done. There's no way I'm going to complete it today, so I can prioritize my time wisely. Let me schedule this. I know it's not urgent, but it is important, so I can actually get it done in a relevant time, and it's not going to overwhelm me and burn me out. We do this to ourselves is what I'm really trying to say. We put ourselves in situations where either we're telling ourselves it needs to get done right now, or maybe we're doing stuff right here because we're like, I want to get this done, or it may be easy for me, or maybe it's my skill set, so we're running to this, and we're putting everything here, but we're missing a lot of the opportunity that we can have here.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so we're gonna stay in this box for a little bit. I got a couple more things I want to share here, just to give more context here, and I will give examples, so don't worry about that. So what are in these categories? So over here, the not important, the non-urgent, these are the time wasters. They just suck up your time. When you think about the urgent, the not important, these are all the distractions. The things that are like distracting us very quickly. We're going to talk about this more. This will be fun. You think about the important, not urgent, and let me just tell you, this is where you want to live most of the time, and we will talk about that. So usually we go to this box like this is it. I think that's a challenge. Everybody has it for this box. They're like, yeah, do it, do it, do it, do it. And I'm like, yo, schedule it. You know why? Because these are the value adding opportunities. These are the value adding opportunities for yourself and other people. You want to add value to people in your life. You want to add value in yourself. You have to schedule it.
Love that. It's important.
Very important.
It's so easy to overlook that, you know? It's important and you want to do a good job with it. I think that's probably some of the criteria of anything that's coming in. Is it or is it not?
Mm-hmm. And it's not urgent, so no one's going to come to you and say, Steven, did you call your mom today? You need to call her right now. You're never going to feel that urgency, but you know it's important.
And you know, my last principle around being disciplined, and I even mentioned in it, the first way I went through it was disciplined enough to say no in exchange for saying yes to myself. The art of saying no is where that came from. And I love the way that you're showing here that if it's in this not urgent, important category that we scheduled, we made sure that it was that important. And I think there's still a lot of work and almost an ongoing thing of like how to be great at making somebody feel good when I need to schedule something. Like, it's not that I don't want to do it right now and I know it's not important to you, but given all of this and what's important to me, if we can schedule it, I can now add value, more value, and give you my best. I think that's where, like, so many times, man, I overextend myself and the product's not becoming, right? And something I'm not happy with. Almost, again, full circle with where we started with you in the weekend. Like, if you're going to be somewhere, be great. You know, if you're going to do something, do it great. And it makes me, you know, I got the feels right now because there's so many things.
It's clicking, and I'm hearing you, and I love it. And I just think I will emphasize this. This is the opportunity I feel like a lot of people are missing. There's so much more value people can add if they don't live here. I want people to live more here and spend more time here. So I'm putting as the necessary tasks. You got to get them done. They're very, very necessary, but we put things that should be here over here sometimes because we've neglected this too long. So when this is neglected way too long, sometimes we have to push it here. But also, these are things that we have to almost create space for because they're probably going to come up more urgently. Like, there might be a request from the boss, like, I have to do this right now. But here's what's important. This is why I love prioritization. When an urgent request comes and we hear that, it doesn't mean like everything's thrown out the window and we go crazy. No, we take a couple minutes and say, all right, what do I have to do today? I'm going to shift this to tomorrow. I'll move this. Okay, now let's go. We just kind of go crazy once the urgent request comes. Like, are you kidding me? And we freak out and we just jump on that and then our whole day's ruined. Why can't we take a minute or two just to really think about like what we need to move around for tomorrow and then we dive into it? So there's a way to go about this top section that's way healthier instead of living here when it leads to burnout and then also like navigating this like we only do this when it comes very, very urgent. Haven't talked to family member in 6 months, so I gotta call them, right? So how do we navigate this a lot wiser? And that's the hope that we're trying to get to.
I love it. I'm really thinking about a situation too with like scaling organizations, and so like with the technology side of the world, like a lot of times you'll build something, and then to actually be able to scale that organization, you create a whole separate team, which will become a whole separate organization to handle urgent, important tasks. And the irony is like never once did we talk about the value added opportunities. A lot of times we were talking about the individual resources that were working 20 hours, having to handle necessary tasks, and then get back to adding value, and then getting on them about not doing as good of a job as you know they're capable of. But I think that's where like a really practical example of that is scaling a corporate organization. And it's the same principle within yourself of, and maybe you're going to say this, like you need to have time for these necessary tasks. And I think too, just not knowing that they're going to come, but still knowing there's time in your day to handle them, value.
Yes. So where we're getting, bro. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples so you can sit in this for a little bit longer. This will be the last thing on the earth. Well, not the last thing. The last thing I'll put up on here, and then I want to show you a couple things. Okay. So what is categorized some examples of not important, not urgent? I'm going to put these. Social media scrolling. Just busy work. Binge watching Netflix, the comment section in any social app, right? It's not saying, especially when people, I remember someone asked me before, like, dude, I watch Netflix. I'm like, I'm not saying don't watch Netflix. I'm just saying there might be times where you just binge. All I'm saying, whether you do it or not, it's not important and it's not urgent. It's not saying, I'm not trying to say bad or not, but that's why I said limit this.
Yeah.
Limit it because it takes up so much time, but is not important at all. Okay? Then we have this urgent, but not important. Clearing your inbox. I know some people who watch this are going to be like, maybe a little offended at that, but clearing your inbox, social calls, responding to texts, and interruptions. Someone comes to your office, hey, what's up? Yeah, let's chat a little bit. So these are things that feel urgent, like, oh, I got to clear my inbox. I got to respond to that email right now. But it's really not that important. People are like, it is important in the grand scheme of things of how we can move the ball down the field. And we're talking about this picture of prioritization, right? And I think that's why I want to remind people, this isn't just what's important, what's not. We're thinking about prioritization. How do we move? How do we be productive? What's going to be allow us to be the most productive? It's really going to be in this category right here. Emails isn't really there. Social calls isn't there. Responding to texts isn't there. Interruptions isn't really there. Okay? I'm going to do this one last. Okay, urgent, important. Urgent request from boss. Medical emergencies. These are things that we don't think about. Like, we need to create space for this because we don't always know when they're going to come. Pressing problems, things that we got to fix this bug. I mean, think about the app I was using. There was like that bug. I'm sure they were like, this is urgent. We got to work on this until we fix it, right? And rush deadlines. You're like, this has to be done by tomorrow. So you're pushing this to this category. And then we have this category over here. Love this category, man. Invested in relationships, planning, creative work, personal development, professional development. All areas that we're really, really, really excited about, right? Most people want this. No one's going to tell you, like, I don't want to invest in my relationships. They want to. People want to do this stuff, but they spend so much time here, so much time here, so much time here, they have no time for this. This is where goals happen. If you want to really think through your goals and all the things you want to do, it's happening here. But if your life is so full of this, it's not going to happen.
I love this, man. I really relate to that not important, urgent category. I think what's interesting about it too is seeing it displayed like this too, is it almost feels like stuff, and then without the social calls, but like side of the desk multitasking. But I'm so infatuated with like this value thing. Like part of what I worry about too is like, if I'm not completely focused on something, is it the best that I can do? And like the Sunday was a great example where like I had something I was laser focused on and it came up pretty damn good, like something you can be really proud of. But I don't always have the luxury to have days like that, or I tell myself that I don't always have the luxury to have days like that. But I think about those things and like not a single one of those were part of my day Sunday. Like when I have really good days, I'm not focused on any of that. And it usually leads to, I'll say, planning and creative work. I really do want to keep spending time on personal development and then investing in relationships. And you know what's interesting about that too, I think about it a lot as I have a lot of amazing people in my life, and something I've wanted to become more intentional. It was actually ever since something you posted about sending a nice text to somebody as a good habit instead of scrolling through social media, and how that can actually transpire into a much better day. Like, I want to start just sending a text to somebody before I need something from them. Like, hey, John, thinking of you. Hope you're doing well. When you get a minute, send me some life updates. Really interested in what you're doing and how life's going. Like, just like you know, completely raw, caring, and just the person that I'm aspiring to be. But like, I have to schedule that. Right? Like, that's what's so crazy about it. Is this the world we live in? But I should schedule it. Calling my
So good.
grandmothers is another one. Like, I'm so fortunate to have two grandmothers left, and I'm constantly feeling bad about not talking to them because you can imagine it's the first thing that gets deprioritized. So it's a lot, man.
I hear you, bro. And I love giving people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think people are intentionally trying to avoid certain things. It's just there's so much energy here and things are feeling so urgent that the space to create time for this is not there.
Yeah.
So this is why I love prioritization, because it's a never-ending journey that we're constantly working on it. But we should start to see this shift more and more. I want you to look at this. This gives you a perspective of where I think most people are. And we'll show you this on the screen, just a perspective of where people spend their time as far as the urgency, and how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's pretty accurate for you, or what would you change if you would change it?
And I think actually, I don't know if I should feel good or bad about this, but I don't spend too much time today on urgent and important.
That's great.
I really don't. I think the not urgent, important, like 5%, I think I might spend way too much time on that. I know we referenced how I prioritize within that prioritization category, and whether I'm doing too much planning and creative work and not enough investing in relationships. The urgent and not important, this is helpful just to like relate it back. I think it's about what I spend, probably 20%. And I'll justify that another time. But the not urgent, not important, I think I might be going over 100%, or I guess I'm leaking into the urgent, important, but I'm replacing urgent, important with not urgent, not important. So a couple of wins, a couple of losses.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Just wanted to get a perspective.
Yeah.
Here's where I would love to see you move more into. And I think this is, like you mentioned, it's really going to be more of defining this. You're spending time here. What are you actually doing? How do you really
Cool.
fine tune this? But the fact you're spending less time here is good, because there are going to be some pressing problems that come up. These things are going to come, so you don't need to really think too much about it. But these things you're going to have to schedule.
And I'm very aware and grateful too, and not just looking at medical emergencies, but I've even made a lot of investments over a long period of time to limit the amount of urgent requests from customers, let's say, or urgent requests from bosses, rush deadlines. Like, those are sometimes symptoms of not doing enough planning, right? And so I think that's what's so interesting about those two categories too. Like, as much time as we may think we need here, and we talked about it earlier, like strategy and tactic. Like, if you do the strategic work, tactics are going to be a little bit more sane, versus when you're not doing enough strategic work, there's going to be a lot more urgent requests from your boss. I'd even argue if you don't have good relationships, you're not going to be able to get yourself the time you need because you're not trusted.
Bingo. You're nailing it. If you put more time here, this is naturally going to decrease. That's the beauty.
And I mean, even the medical emergencies too, but we'll deal with that. But I mean, and I'm so fortunate too, I don't think a lot of us, there's nothing productive of thinking about the car accident, or, God knows what could happen every day when you go to the gym, right? You think about it all the time. And I think a lot of people were very lucky that, and obviously I've had my share of unlucky, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse. So I think, anyways, we could talk about that for hours. There was one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, it was about the degree per day. I have real bad days, you know, and I think consistency is one of our many goals. But if I could be more consistent with my ratios, I will be a lot happier. I think it's the bad days and like for instance, like binge watching Netflix, that will be a full 24-hour period for me. It won't just be 5 hours a day for 5 days. It'll be a whole day. And that's the whole day, missing sleep, you know, not going to the gym, but it's very violent and almost somewhat manic in terms of like when I go down versus getting myself up and being consistently good.
That's what we're going to talk about. And that's why I don't want this isn't a fix it time. Like, all right, here's what you do to fix this. This is a journey of how do you slowly start to replace, shift things around. And that's what we'll talk about. But I love the awareness around that. I would love to see you move more into this direction. Of course, I'll be talking through what do you spend your time in on this not urgent, important stuff, but even seeing the decrease here and here.
So about 16-hour day we're looking at here, right? Not to like, but so I think 70%. I got a lot of work to do for sure, but I like this view. It's green.
Yeah, it's green.
Awesome, man.
Good stuff. Okay, this was a lot to take in. How you feeling? You good?
Good. I think with these things too, and I don't know if I don't have to do this, but I almost want to like write down like the things that I'm doing because I'm curious too, like how they'll fit into this.
Dude, you are just perfect at giving segues into things.
Sorry.
Just naturally. I mean.